The smell hit me before I even opened the lid of the Dutch oven. It was a deep, resonant aroma, the scent of time. It was the smell of collagen breaking down into gelatin, of red wine reducing until it was thick enough to coat the back of a spoon, of pearl onions caramelized in butter until they were the color of antique mahogany. It was the smell of patience. I stood in my small kitchen, the one with the linoleum floor that curled at the corners and the stove that rattled when the oven was on. My hands, spotted with age and scarred from 50 years of burns and cuts, rested on the cool enamel of the pot. 72 hours. That's how long it had taken. First the marinade, then the sear, then the slow, gentle braise at exactly 275 degrees. I wasn't just making dinner, I was making bouffe bourguignon, and not the watered-down version you get in bistros today. This was the recipe from 1974, the recipe from Le Lion d'Or, the recipe that had made grown men cry on the Rue de Rivoli. "Bill, are you bringing it out? We're starving." The voice came from the dining room. Chloe, my daughter-in-law. I took a deep breath. I smoothed the front of my faded flannel shirt. I picked up the heavy pot with a towel and walked into the dining room. My son, David, sat at the head of the table. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days, squeezed between his job at the insurance firm and the hurricane that was his wife. Chloe sat to his right, tapping furiously on her phone. "Here we are," I said, setting the pot down on the trivet. "Careful, it's hot." I lifted the lid. Steam billowed out, carrying the heavy, earthy perfume of bay leaf, thyme, and beef. To me, it was a symphony. Chloe waved her hand in front of her face, wrinkling her nose. "Wow," she said. "That is potent." "It's reduced," I explained, serving a ladleful onto her plate. The meat fell apart at the touch of the spoon. The sauce was dark, glossy, almost black. "The wine needs to concentrate to balance the fat." Chloe looked at the plate. She poked a piece of carrot with her fork. She didn't take a bite. "Bill," she sighed, putting her fork down, "it's just brown." I paused, the ladle hovering over David's plate. "It's stew, Chloe. Stew is brown." "It's heavy," she said, gesturing vaguely at the dish. "It looks like sludge. Look, I appreciate the effort, really. I know you spent all day on this, but at Ether, we're moving away from this kind of peasant food." "Peasant food," I repeated. The words felt like a slap. "It's outdated," Chloe continued, picking up her wine glass, a Pinot Noir that was far too young and served too warm. "Modern dining is about elevation. It's about air, lightness. We serve concepts, Bill, not buckets of meat. We're doing foams, gels, spherification. We want the diner to feel weightless." She looked at me with a pitying smile. "Please don't bring leftovers of this to the opening night on Friday. I don't want the staff to smell it. It might contaminate the olfactory profile of the dining room." I looked at David, my son, the boy who used to sit on the counter and watch me debone a duck when he was 5, the boy who knew the difference between a Brunoise and a Macédoine before he could read. "David?" I asked softly. David looked at his wife, then at the stew, then at the table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Yeah, Dad," he mumbled, cutting a small piece of bread. "It is a bit rich, you know? Maybe next time just stick to a salad or some grilled chicken. We're trying to watch our cholesterol." I slowly lowered the ladle back into the pot. I put the lid back on. The smell was cut off, trapped inside the iron. "I understand," I said. My voice was steady. It didn't shake. "I learned a long time ago that emotion has no place in the kitchen. In the kitchen, there is only execution. I'll clear it away." "Oh, don't worry. We ordered sushi," Chloe said brightly, her phone pinging with a notification. "It should be here any minute. But thanks anyway, Bill. It was a nice thought." I picked up the pot. It was heavy, heavier than it had been a moment ago. I walked back into the kitchen. I set the pot on the stove. I took a spoon. I tasted the sauce. It was perfect. It had the depth of the ocean. It had the soul of the earth. It was a masterpiece of technique, a balance of acid and fat that had taken me a lifetime to master. I scraped the entire contents of the pot into the trash can. Slop. The sound was final. Peasant food, I whispered to the empty room. I washed the pot. I dried it. I went to my room and sat in the dark, smelling the phantom aroma of time, and waited for Friday. Friday night, opening night at Ether. The restaurant was located in a repurposed warehouse in the trendy arts district. It was a cavern of concrete, exposed steel, and cold blue lighting. There were no tablecloths. The chairs were made of clear acrylic that looked uncomfortable and proved to be torturous within 5 minutes. The noise level was deafening. Techno music thumped from hidden speakers, a rhythmic, headache-inducing bass line that vibrated the silverware. I sat at table 42. Table 42 was the leper table. It was tucked in the far back corner, right next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen. Every time a server came out, I got a blast of hot air and the smell of stale fryer oil. Chloe had put me here. Ideally, we wouldn't have family here at all tonight, she had told me earlier, adjusting her headset. We're fully booked with influencers and press. But David insisted. Just try to be invisible, Bill. Don't tell anyone you're related to me. It ruins the mystique. So I sat, invisible. I wore my best tweed jacket, the one with the leather patches on the elbows. It was warm in the room, but I kept it buttoned. It was armor. I looked around. The restaurant was full. People in expensive, asymmetrical clothing were shouting over the music, taking photos of their drinks with the flash on. The menu was printed on a piece of slate. It listed ingredients, not dishes. Fog/pine/essence of rain. Texture of salmon/nitrogen/ash. Deconstructed egg/hay smoke. I watched the servers rushing by. They looked terrified. Their eyes were wide, their movements jerky. They were carrying plates that looked like science experiments. One plate held a single scallop sitting on a rock, surrounded by dry ice fog. Another held a balloon, an actual balloon, tied to a breadstick. Edible helium, the server explained to the table next to me. You inhale the gas, and then eat the skin. It represents the fleeting nature of joy. I closed my eyes. The fleeting nature of joy. I opened them just as the front door swung open. The air in the room seemed to change. The temperature dropped. The chatter died down, rippling from the entrance toward the back of the room like a wave of silence. A man had entered. He was tall, thin as a rail, wearing a black trench coat over a black suit. He had silver hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from flint. He carried a small notebook. He didn't wait for the hostess. He stood in the center of the room, scanning the tables with eyes that missed nothing. Lucian Thorne, the vulture. I knew him. Not personally, we had never met, but I knew his reputation. He was the city's most feared critic. He didn't just review restaurants, he dissected them. He had destroyed the Gilded Lily with a single sentence. Eating here is like being hugged by a corpse. They closed a week later. Chloe appeared from the back office. She saw him. She stopped dead in her tracks. Her face went the color of the napkins, stark white. She rushed over to the hostess stand. I saw her whispering frantically. She was shaking. Thorne was seated at table 1, the best table, the center stage. He sat down. He didn't look at the menu. He placed his notebook on the table. He took out a fountain pen. He uncapped it. The gesture was like a judge picking up a gavel. I looked toward the kitchen doors. Through the small circular windows I could see the line. It was chaos. The head chef, Jax, was visible in the past. Jax was 30 years old, covered in tattoos up to his neck, wearing a black denim apron and a beanie. He was the darling of the local food blogs. He called himself a culinary alchemist. Right now, the alchemist looked like he was about to vomit. He was screaming. I couldn't hear the words over the music, but I saw the veins bulging in his neck. He was throwing tickets. He was shoving plates back at the sous chefs. I smelled it then. Underneath the expensive perfume of the dining room, underneath the smell of the dry ice, I smelled burning, not the good kind of char, acrid, bitter carbon, burnt garlic. Garlic in the pan too early, I whispered to myself. High heat, rookie mistake. A server ran past me, tears streaming down her face. She was carrying a plate back to the kitchen. He sent it back, she sobbed to the busboy. Thorne sent it back. He said the texture of salmon was cat food. I watched table 1. Thorne was sitting back, his arms crossed. He looked bored. He looked like a predator playing with a wounded mouse. The kitchen doors swung open again. Jack stormed out into the dining room. He wasn't carrying food. He was carrying a nitrous oxide canister. "Who sent it back?" Jack shouted. The music stopped abruptly. Someone had hit the mute button in panic. "Who doesn't understand the vision?" Chloe ran to him. Jax, please, go back to the kitchen." "I can't work like this," Jack screamed. He gestured at Thorne with the canister. "That man is negative energy. He's blocking my chakras. The foam won't stabilize because the vibes are toxic." Thorne looked at Jax. He picked up his pen. He wrote a single line in his notebook. He didn't even look up. "The Wagyu is cold," a sous chef yelled from the kitchen window. "Chef, we need hands. The tickets are printing." The sound of the ticket machine was audible now. Check, 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 check. Relentless. A machine gun firing paper bullets. "I'm done," Jax yelled. He untied his apron and threw it on the floor. "I quit. You people don't deserve my art. I'm going to Berlin." He stormed out the front door. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence in the dining room. Chloe stood in the middle of the floor, staring at the front door. She looked small. She looked destroyed. The sous chefs in the window were frozen. They looked like deer in headlights. The grill was flaring up behind them, a grease fire starting on the plancha. Thorne tapped his pen on the table. Tap, tap, tap. It was the sound of a nail being driven into a coffin. Chloe turned. She looked around the room. Her eyes were wild. She looked at the investors, who were whispering angrily. She looked at David, who was hiding behind his menu. Then she looked at me. She walked over to my table. She was trembling so hard her teeth were chattering. "Dad," she whispered. "Dad, you have to go." "What?" I asked. "Thorne is watching," she hissed. "This is a disaster. I can't have you sitting here. It looks pathetic. Just go home. Please. David will drive you." "Chloe," I said, "your kitchen is on fire. Literally." I pointed to the window. Black smoke was starting to curl out of the top of the doorframe. "I know," she sobbed. "It's over. We're bankrupt. Just leave, Bill. Don't let him see you. Go." She tried to pull me up by my arm. Her grip was weak. She was fainting on her feet. I looked at her. I saw the arrogance stripped away. I saw the fear. But more importantly, I smelled the butter. It wasn't just the garlic anymore. It was beurre noisette turning into beurre noir. It was the smell of a scallop searing 1 second too long. It was the smell of proteins denaturing into leather. It was the smell of bad cooking. And that offended me more than her insults. I looked at Lucian Thorne. He was watching us now. He had an eyebrow raised. He was waiting for the final act of the tragedy. I stood up. "Dad, where are you going?" "The exit is that way," Chloe cried, pulling at my sleeve. I shrugged her off, gently but firmly. "Let go, Chloe," I said. I unbuttoned my tweed jacket. I took it off. I folded it neatly and placed it on the back of the acrylic chair. I unbuttoned my cuffs. I rolled my sleeves up past my elbows. My forearms were corded with muscle, mapped with the white scars of 1,000 grease burns. "Bill?" Chloe stared at me. "What are you doing?" I ignored her. I turned toward the kitchen doors. "Service is not over," I said. I pushed the doors open and walked into the heat. The kitchen was a war zone. Smoke hung low in the air. The floor was slick with spilled oil and water. Pans were piled in the sink. The dishwasher was overflowing. 3 sous chefs were standing by the pass. One was texting. One was crying. One was staring at the grease fire on the grill, holding a damp towel, but too scared to use it. The ticket machine was still printing. The ribbon of paper dragged on the floor, covered in footprints. I walked to the grill. I took the towel from the frozen sous chef. Snap. I smothered the fire in one motion. The flames died. I turned to the expo station. I picked up the stack of tickets. I scanned them. Table 1, Thorn, second course, pending. I looked at the sous chef who was texting. "You?" I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was a low rumble cutting through the noise of the extraction fans. He looked up. "Who are you? You can't be back here. This is a sterile environment." "Get off your phone," I said, "and get me an apron." "Man, screw this," the kid sneered. "Jack's quit. We're done. I'm not taking orders from some grandpa in a flannel shirt." I stepped into his space. I moved with a speed that belied my 71 years. I grabbed the front of his chef's coat and backed him against the stainless steel prep table. I didn't blink. I let him look into my eyes. He didn't see a grandpa. He saw the man who had run the brigade at Le Lion d'Or. He saw the man who had thrown a cleaver at a line cook for oversalting a consommé. He saw the Iron General. I whispered, "Get me an apron, or get out of my kitchen." The kid swallowed hard. He nodded. He scrambled to grab a clean white apron from the shelf. He handed it to me. I tied it around my waist. I pulled the strings tight. The familiar weight of the fabric settled on my hips. I walked to the knife station. I picked up a chef's knife. It was a Japanese blade, expensive but dull. Jax hadn't honed it. I grabbed the sharpening steel. Shing, shing, shing. 3 strokes, fast, precise. The sound rang out like a bell. I turned to the prep table. There was a basket of shallots. I grabbed a handful. Taka, 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 taka. The knife was a blur. The shallots were reduced to a perfect, uniform brunoise in 6 seconds. I swept them into a bowl. I slammed the knife down on the board. The 3 sous chefs jumped. They were looking at me now, really looking at me. "My name is Chef," I said. "Not Bill, not Grandpa, Chef." I pointed to the weeping sous chef. "You, clear the sink, wash the pans, now." I pointed to the text messaging kid. "You, clear the pass, throw away the foam, throw away the balloons. If I see dry ice, you're fired." I pointed to the third one. "You, fire the ovens, 400 degrees. Bring me butter, bring me eggs, bring me the Dover sole I saw in the walk-in." But the menu," the kid stammered, the concept." I grabbed a squeeze bottle of lavender gel from the counter and threw it into the trash. It hit with a satisfying thud. "The concept is dead," I said. "We are cooking food." I looked at the ticket machine. I ripped off the long tail of orders. I stabbed the first ticket onto the spike. "Table 1, I shouted. "Thorn, he wants to eat." I looked at them. "Oui, chef," I barked. They hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then the instinct kicked in. The fear kicked in. The need to be led kicked in. "Oui, chef," they shouted in unison. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "Let's dance." The taste of victory. Part 2. The kitchen of Ether had been a riot of noise and panic 5 minutes ago. Now It was a monastery of focus. I stood at the center island, the stainless steel cool against my hip. I didn't shout. I didn't throw plates. I simply conducted. "Station 1, I said, my voice low, barely rising above the hum of the ventilation. "Clear the pass. I want white plates, round, warm to 120 degrees. Oui, chef," the sous chef, a boy named Marcus, who had been texting earlier, replied. He wasn't texting now. He was scrubbing the stainless steel until it gleamed, terrified to look me in the eye, but moving with a speed he didn't know he possessed. "Station 2, I continued. "Herbs. I need chives, tarragon, chervil, parsley, finely chopped, not bruised. If I see green juice on the cutting board, you start over. You slice, you do not crush." "Oui, chef," the second cook said. Her hands were shaking, but she was cutting. I walked the line. I was not Bill, the retiree. I was not the man who struggled to unclog the sink at home. I was the ghost of Le Lion d'Or. My spine was straight, my movements economical. Every step had a purpose. I reached the walk-in refrigerator. I pulled the handle. The cold air rushed out, smelling of raw fish and ozone. I bypassed the vacuum-sealed bags of fermented elk moss and dehydrated soil. I went straight to the dairy section. I grabbed a crate of eggs, brown, organic, free range. I grabbed a block of butter, unsalted, high-fat content, European style. I carried them back to the main station. "What are you doing?" The shriek came from the swinging doors. Chloe burst into the kitchen. Her hair was coming undone, her mascara smudged. She looked at the crate of eggs on the counter as if I had placed a live grenade there. "Bill, are you insane?" she hissed, looking back at the door to ensure no one was watching. "You have eggs? We are a molecular gastronomy restaurant. We serve textures. We serve experiences. You cannot serve breakfast to Lucian Thorne." I cracked an egg into a glass bowl. Crack, plop, one-handed. Perfect separation. No shell. "I am not serving breakfast," I said calmly. "I am serving dinner." "He will destroy us." Chloe grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. "He hates simple food. He wants innovation. He wants to be challenged. Jax was making a nitrogen-frozen olive oil cloud. You can't give him this." I stopped. I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her eyes. "Chloe," I said, "Jax left because he was afraid. He was afraid because he doesn't know how to cook. He knows how to perform chemistry, but he doesn't know how to feed a human soul." I gently removed her hand. "Get out of my kitchen." "It's my kitchen," she screamed. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight, the brigade answers to me. Marcus?" The sous-chef looked up, sweat dripping from his nose. "Oui, chef." "Escort the owner to the dining room. Make sure she has a glass of wine. She looks pale." Marcus hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then he stepped forward. "Right this way, ma'am." Chloe gaped at him. She looked at me. She realized with a dawning horror that she had lost control of her own staff. The hierarchy of the kitchen is absolute, and it is based on competence, not ownership. She turned and fled, sobbing, through the double doors. I turned back to the bowl. 3 eggs, a pinch of sea salt, a grind of white pepper. I picked up a fork, not a whisk. A whisk incorporates too much air. An omelet should be creamy, dense, not a souffle. I beat the eggs, click, 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 click. The sound was rhythmic, aggressive, musical. It was the sound of 1974. I turned on the gas burner, high heat. I placed a carbon steel pan on the flame. It was an old pan, hidden in the back of the stack, black with seasoning. It was the only honest piece of equipment in the room. I dropped a knob of butter into the pan. Hiss. I watched it. I didn't look away. Cooking is about timing. It is about the space between seconds, The butter foamed. It sang. The water content evaporated. The solids began to toast. The smell rose up, nutty, rich, golden. Beurre noisette. Before it could burn, I poured in the eggs. Sizzle. I grabbed the handle of the pan. I shook it violently back and forth while stirring with the fork in a circular motion. The eggs scrambled instantly in the high heat. Curds formed, small, tight, creamy curds. Herbs, I ordered. A hand appeared, dropping a pinch of bright green vibrancy into the yellow mixture. I stopped stirring. I tilted the pan. Gravity did the rest. The eggs slid to the far edge. I tapped the handle. Tap, tap. The lip of the egg mixture folded over itself. I reached for the plate, a warm, white plate. I inverted the pan. The omelet rolled out. It was a perfect cylinder, a cigar of yellow velvet. It had no color on the outside, no brown spots, no burns. It was a uniform, pale gold, smooth as skin. I took a brush and painted it with a little melted butter to give it a shine. I sprinkled a few flakes of Malden salt on top. That was it. No foam, no smoke, no balloons. Just eggs, butter, salt, herbs, and heat. "Service," I called out. The expeditor, a terrified girl named Sarah, looked at the plate. She looked at me. "Chef, there's no garnish, no microgreens?" "The garnish is the flavor," I said. "Take it to table 1, now." She picked up the plate. Her hands were shaking. She walked through the swinging doors. I wiped the rim of the pan. I set it down. The kitchen went silent. The sous chef stopped working. They moved to the small circular windows in the doors. They wanted to see. I walked to the window. I looked out. The dining room was hushed. The music had been turned down. Everyone was watching the girl carry the white plate across the room. It looked stark, almost naked, in the moody, blue-lit industrial space. Chloe was standing by the bar, her hands over her mouth, looking like she was witnessing a murder. Sarah reached table 1. She placed the plate in front of Lucian Thorne. Thorne looked down. He stared at the omelet. For a long moment he didn't move. He sat in his black trench coat, a gargoyle of judgment. The yellow ellipse on the white plate seemed to glow under the spotlight. He picked up his fork. He poked the center of the omelet. It yielded instantly. It was bavous, soft, runny, almost liquid in the center. A tiny stream of rich, creamy yolk and butter oozed out. Thorne leaned in. He inhaled. I knew what he smelled. He didn't smell the concept of a farm. He smelled a real farm. He smelled the grass the chickens ate. He smelled the butter from Normandy. He smelled the tarragon from a garden in Provence. He cut a piece. He lifted it to his mouth. He ate it. He froze. His eyes closed. From the kitchen window I watched him, and I saw the tension leave his shoulders. I saw the armor of the vulture fall away. I knew where he was. He wasn't in a warehouse in New York. He was in Paris. He was 22 years old again. He was sitting in a bistro on a rainy Tuesday, broke and hungry, eating the only thing he could afford, cooked by a grandmother who loved him. He was tasting memory. A single tear leaked from his left eye. It rolled down his sharp cheekbone. He chewed slowly, savoring the texture, the silkiness of the egg, the crunch of the salt, the bite of the chives. He swallowed. He put the fork down. He stood up. The chair scraped loudly on the concrete floor. The sound made Chloe jump. She ran toward him, desperate damage control. "Mr. Thorne," she cried, her voice high and shrill. "I am so sorry. That was a mistake. The kitchen is in chaos tonight. We had a rogue employee. I can take that away. I can bring you the scallop fog." Thorne looked at her. He looked at her as if she were a fly buzzing around a cathedral. "Move," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. "But "Move, you amateur!" Thorne snapped. He pushed past her. He didn't walk to the exit. He walked to the kitchen doors. He pushed them open with both hands. The sous chefs scattered like roaches. They backed against the walls, terrified. Thorne walked into the kitchen. He stood in the center of the room amidst the stainless steel and the lingering smoke. He looked around. His eyes landed on me. I was leaning against the prep table, wiping my knife. I hadn't moved. He looked at the apron tied around my waist. He looked at the rolled-up sleeves of my tweed jacket. He looked at my hands, the burns, the scars, the hands of a lifer. He stepped closer. He squinted. "It can't be," he whispered. He took another step. "The technique," Thorne said, his voice trembling with emotion. "The fold, the heat control. There's only one man I know who folds an egg like that, but he vanished in 1978 after the fire." I put the knife down. I crossed my arms. "Hello, Lucian," I said. "You've aged." Thorne gasped. He put a hand to his chest. "Guillaume?" he asked. "Guillaume Henri?" "My name is Bill now," I said. "I'm retired." "Retired?" Thorne laughed. It was a joyous, incredulous sound. "You don't retire from being a god, Guillaume." He bowed. Right there in the middle of the greasy, smoke-filled kitchen of a failing hipster restaurant, the most feared critic in New York bowed to me, deeply, respectfully. "Maestro," Thorne said, "I thought you were dead. I wrote your obituary." "I was just resting," I said, "and cooking for my family, although they prefer sushi." Chloe burst into the kitchen. She looked from Thorne to me, her brain trying to reconfigure reality. "Mr. Thorne?" she stammered. You know my father-in-law?" Thorne turned to her. The warmth vanished from his face. "Your father-in-law?" Thorne sneered. "Madam, this man is not your father-in-law. This man is the reason I became a food critic. This man is the executive chef of Le Lion d'Or. He held 3 Michelin stars before you were born. He is the Mozart of the mother sauces." Chloe stared at me, her mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Bill," she whispered, you were a chef?" "I told you," I said quietly. "I made stew." Thorne turned back to me. He pulled a linen napkin from his pocket. He took out his fountain pen. He wrote something on the napkin. He placed it on the stainless steel counter. "The review goes to print tomorrow," Thorne said. "I was going to burn this place to the ground, but you have saved them." He looked at the uneaten ingredients on the counter. "1 omelet," Thorne shook his head. "1 simple omelet, and you humiliated every foam and gel in this city." He reached out and took my hand. He shook it firmly. "It is an honor to eat your food again, Maestro. Please, don't vanish this time." "We'll see," I said. Thorne turned and walked out. He didn't look at Chloe. He walked straight out of the restaurant, his black coat billowing behind him. Chloe lunged for the napkin. She read it. Her hands shook. 5 stars. The king has returned. The omelet at Ether is the only thing worth eating in New York. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, glittering with a new emotion. Not respect. Greed. "Bill," she screamed. "Did you hear that? 5 stars. We're going to be famous. We're going to be rich." She ran to me. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. "We have to rebrand," she babbled, pacing the floor. "We'll call it Williams." "No, the Lion. We'll do classic French. You can run the kitchen. We'll charge $50 for an omelet. The Lion will be around the block." The investors were crowding into the kitchen now, patting me on the back, shaking my hand, asking for selfies. "Incredible work, Bill. We knew you had it in you. Executive chef, name your salary." I looked at them. I looked at the sharks circling the water. I looked at Chloe, who was already calculating the profit margins on eggs. I slowly untied the apron. I folded it. I placed it on the counter. I rolled down my sleeves. I buttoned my cuffs. I put on my tweed jacket. "Bill?" Chloe asked, stopping her pacing. "What are you doing?" "The shift isn't over. We have tables waiting." "I'm going home," I said. "What?" "You can't leave. You're the executive chef. Thorne said so." "Thorne is a customer," I said. "I am a grandfather." "But the money!" Chloe cried. "Think of the legacy. You can be famous again." I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at her. "I was famous, Chloe," I said. "It's loud, and it's empty." I pointed to the pan on the stove. "Cooking is about love. It's about feeding people because you care about them. You don't care about the food. You only love the applause." "I can learn," she pleaded. "Teach me." "You can't teach love," I said. "You have to feel it." I pushed the doors open. I walked through the dining room. The guests were staring at me. The whisper had spread. "That's him. That's the maestro." I ignored them. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. The silence of the street was beautiful. My ears were ringing from the kitchen noise. My hands smelled of onions and butter. It was a good smell. My stomach grumbled. I hadn't eaten since lunch. I walked 2 blocks down to a dirty diner with a neon sign buzzing in the window. Joe's Burgers. I went inside. I sat at the counter. "What can I get you, sweetie?" the waitress asked. She looked tired. She didn't know who I was. She didn't care about Michelin stars. "Cheeseburger," I said. "Medium rare and fries, extra salt." "You got it." I pulled out my phone. There was a text message from David, my son. "Dad, Chloe just called. She's hysterical. She told me everything. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have stood up for you. I should have eaten the stew. I'm so sorry." I looked at the screen. I thought about the boy who used to sit on my counter. I thought about the man who was just trying to keep peace in his marriage. I typed a reply. "Don't apologize, son." I paused. I watched the cook on the griddle behind the counter. He smashed a burger patty. He seasoned it. "Just learn to salt your pasta water. It should taste like the sea." I hit send. The waitress slid a plate in front of me, a greasy, perfect cheeseburger. I took a bite. It wasn't Le Lion d'Or, it wasn't art, but it was warm, and it was real, and that was enough. End of story.